Welcome back to the White Hill Mansion pod. I'm Andrea, joined again here with Kyle and Dawn, the Vice President and President of Friends of White Hill Mansion. And if you guys notice, we are down here in the basement, otherwise known as the speakeasy of the mansion. You know, a little cozy tonight. Got some ambiance outside too. And I believe Kyle and Dawn, you guys just came back from a trip at Gettysburg too, back a couple weeks ago. How'd that go?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was awesome. We attended the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, which is a big fundraiser. It helps support kids with cancer, wounded warriors of Pennsylvania. It's 100% all charity. And it's just a big, cool gathering of everyone in the paranormal, in the Northeast and even farther, locations, groups. And it's just a great time, and it's awesome.
3-day party.
3-day party, and it's all for a good cause, which is kind of what, the paranormal for me, it's all about. And Dawn is like saving history, bringing people together. Yeah. Definitely everyone check it out next year. It's already got dates. Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. Check it out.
I mean, Gettysburg is has such a rich history. Everyone knows about Gettysburg and the hauntings that happened there because of the Civil War. So
the Round Top's open now. So if you want to go in there, it's been closed for the last 2 years. They just opened it back up. So definitely worth a drive through the battlefield.
That's where we were. And now we've made it to the second podcast, and we're in the, like Andrew said, we're in the speakeasy.
Yeah, that's part of the house. This is a lot of people's favorite part.
So what is it that you can tell us a little bit about the history of the speakeasy in the basement specifically? Because I understand, the house has been here since the 1700s. Was the basement built along with the house, or was there something that was kind of done here to make it the speakeasy that we ended up knowing it as?
It most likely came with a basement. It wouldn't have looked like this back in colonial times. It would have been a dirt floor, 3 feet higher, low roof. We know that there were tunnels on each side of the house, so one on this side and one on the other side, that went down to the Delaware River. That way, you didn't have Wawas in the day. So you would have had your goods come up through the Delaware River, and then they would be disembarked onto their dock, and probably their slaves or their servants would have brought them up through the tunnels for storage. At that point, makes sense, right?
And it made sense also because the house sits on one of the highest bluffs in this area. So to bring things up a hill or go all the way around to the next street or somewhere where it's less steep, it kind of made practical sense.
You wouldn't want your neighbors seeing your servants bringing your goods. Clutch of girls. Having the tunnels there was very convenient when it came to Prohibition a couple hundred years later. Well, we know that there was a prisoner exchange on the property in December 1776. There are 27 prisoners that were exchanged. We don't know where on the property. However, if they were in the basement, they left a lot of stuff behind, because we know from a memoir that we found in Victorian times that family, which was the Crossley family, found Hessian artifacts in the basement. So they found Hessian beer.
Weapons,
they did say weapons.
I think they said a couple pistols and maybe even a sword or dagger or something.
Oh.
Which, imagine that. I mean, you're just doing some home improvement stuff. You're digging in your basement and boom.
You find a sword.
Hessian sword from the Revolutionary War.
And I just kind of wonder about the Hessian guy, like he's running in the field and he goes, "Oh no, I left it back at the house."
Yeah, which is another crazy mystery that we have. We have so many mysteries here at White Hill. Like, how did they get buried? Did they just get left there? Did somebody actually bury them? Were they trying to hide them? Like, what kind of happened that they were there? Who knows? Even in the 1700s, like we don't really know what the space was used for. I mean, we have some speculations, like maybe there probably was maybe a spring kitchen down here or some kind of utilitarian space, but we really don't have any like historical documentation of during the 1700s or the colonial time period what the basement was used for.
There were a lot of other buildings on the property at that time. So there was a bakehouse. There would have probably been an outdoor kitchen. They think they found evidence of a blacksmith building. So if they would have had some food storage down here, that makes sense. But it could also have been stored on other parts of the house or the property also. So we don't really know. It wasn't until more modern times that we have a better idea of what this basement was used for.
Who knows? Maybe that adds to some of the history and the weird happenings down here. The things that we just don't know what happened down here. We definitely do know what happened here in the Prohibition period.
So let's bring it to that time period. It was around the 1920s. So it was the Glink family, I believe, that it really used this space for the bar area that we come to know it as. Would you say that at the time it was something that was really well known?
We know that Mr. Glink bought the property in early 1920s.
Mhm.
One of the first things he did was dig 3 feet down on the floor so you didn't hit your head when you stood up. He built this bar behind us. So this bar is 101 years old now. This was called, when it opened as a speakeasy, this was called the downstairs. So you had to be invited to
Appropriate.
there you go. You had to be invited to the downstairs. From what I understand, it was like the first kept secret in town. Like everybody knew about it. This was a small town, so I don't expect that hundreds of people were here, but I do expect that probably most of the
The
town
local,
would show
yeah, the
up.
local area, local towns. And
Yeah.
whatnot.
And we do know from Mr. Glink's grandson, John, that the family did brew their own liquor up in the bloody bathroom upstairs. And they did move it up and down the Delaware through the tunnels.
Which, I
That's
mean,
convenient.
Yeah.
in the time period, the 1920s during Prohibition, to lead up to the Great Depression, like that wasn't an uncommon thing for illegal alcohol to be.
Right. And
It was a
most
common.
people thought it was stupid. You know, I think even when you got busted, you probably didn't get into a lot of trouble, which we know that Mr. Glink did get busted at one point. You found the article. I think, on
Yeah,
that, right?
it's really interesting because there's only one article that we have where they came in and they found like one bottle of alcohol and they're like, "Oh, don't you do that again," kind of thing. But it's interesting because we also have newspaper articles from Bordentown, Trenton, right around this area that the state police were busting rum runners on the
Mm.
Delaware River. Boats full of rum from the Caribbean and whatnot were coming up on down here. So it's kind of interesting that it was all kind of here. We're like kind of got, I guess, labbed once or twice, but nothing really stuck. It was kind of just like, hey, don't you do that again. So we
I
don't
have
know.
a drink. Yeah.
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 So, I mean, it was a time where a lot of people were trying to make a living and whatnot. It was tough times. So, but yeah, it's just an interesting time period. And so much probably happened down here when this was a speakeasy during that time period.
I can imagine. Should I tell the story?
Why not? Just roll with it. Of course it happens.
Yeah.
Someone watches, right?
I think don't tell anybody. But I had a gentleman on my tour a couple years ago. He was in his late 70s, early 80s. And he said when he was a kid, his grandfather used to take him fishing on the Delaware River.
Mhm.
And when he was a kid, his grandfather pointed up to White Hill from the river and said, "See that house right there? They used to Shanghai people in that house in the 1930s," as he told him. And I was shocked because number one, now, first of all, take it with a grain of salt because I have no historical record that happened. I've never heard of such a thing on the East Coast. I've always thought it was a West Coast thing.
So what exactly is that?
All right. So there are Shanghai tunnels in San Francisco, which are famous tunnels where
Mhm.
basically you would go to a place of business. Maybe you'd have a drink. If it was a bar, they would drug your drink and knock you out.
Oh.
They would either drag you into a tunnel or a cell or somewhere. They would sell you. A lot of times it was men. They would wake up on a ship to Shanghai where you were then enslaved. So you basically worked as a sailor for free or you got thrown
Mm.
overboard. That's the classic meaning of it.
And it was because there was such a demand at that time for ships to be going back and forth from the East Coast or West Coast to China and the Far East.
Sure. And so, like I said, take it with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
Technically, you do have a path down to Philadelphia and then out to the ocean. So maybe it's a bizarre story, and I
Mhm.
have no proof that it actually happened. I haven't heard any other stories from around here or anything like that. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So if you're running a legal business, say alcohol,
Mhm.
you're going to probably have other people with their hands in the kitty.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot of nefarious people, I think, surrounding you. And that being said, that's where a lot of rumors that the mob was here. I mean,
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
we'll say allegedly.
Allegedly.
So we do know of mobsters that had come here for dinner because this was a very high-end restaurant at the time that said that it was their favorite restaurant. So there are actual mob ties that we know came here. And then there's just kind of a short leap over to say, yeah, there was probably some mob stuff going on. So whether or not it was that evil, I don't know. There's always been rumors of the bordello on the third floor. I don't know. We don't have any historical proof of that.
Yeah,
Maybe,
it's
but
really
maybe
hard
not.
to document a lot of the history.
Well,
It's
yeah.
all rumors
Especially
and
that part,
mysteries,
yeah.
which is really frustrating for us as, historians.
True.
'cause
Yeah.
you want to get that information and be like, yes, this is who was here, and we just don't have it, which kind of adds to the allure of the place.
Sure. And like people will get, say, an EVP of, they'll say, hey, have you ever heard anybody here named Bob? Probably. I mean, no, but
Yeah.
maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
pick a name. They were probably here at one point. You're talking about hundreds of years of, you had bartenders, you had waitresses, you had guests that would come here, you had visitors, and then all the people that lived here years before, and
Mhm.
slaves and servants and all that stuff. So you're talking hundreds and hundreds and
Yeah.
hundreds of
Yeah.
people. I'm sure there was a Bob here at some time. You know what I mean? It's tough.
Yeah, and
No.
like Dawn said, like just the Klink family, who
Mm.
they operated the restaurant and speakeasy from 1922 all the way up to 1972. So almost nearly
Yeah.
50 years. And they ran it successfully.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that too. And just
Absolutely.
how many people in that time period, that 50 years, probably thousands of people
Yeah,
came through
absolutely.
here, just to enjoy the restaurant, hang out, whatever. So
You said that, there's a lot of people that were probably here that were off record. A lot of things were alleged. Do we have any record of any famous people that were here that did dine with the restaurant or maybe came in the
We do
speakeasy?
know that the governor used to eat here. So pick a governor. We were getting some grant work done a couple years ago. And there was a guy here who told the story of his father being a dishwasher. And the cook had called out that day and the governor was coming to eat. This was in the 1980s. So they told the cook, you have an hour to learn how to cook lamb chops. So, and the gentleman told me, he said, my father cooked the lamb chops and the governor said it was the best lamb chops he ever ate in his life.
Wow, that's
He goes,
lucky.
it was decades ago and I still hear the story. So, so we know at least up until that point of time
Yeah.
that you still had congressmen, senators, bigwigs of New Jersey that would come here for meals. Which is
Mhm.
kind of cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I wish they had a guest book. That would have been smart.
That would have been.
but I guess if
maybe it's
in that time period, they may not have like, hey, don't write my
Yeah,
name
don't
down.
tell
Oh, well,
anybody.
especially if
Not
they're
here.
someone from like the mob, or they don't want
Exactly.
to know. They don't want a paper trail.
And you got to
Yeah.
think too, like even now we're off the beaten path. Like
Yeah.
we have GPS and stuff now, but back then in the 20s, 30s, even 40s, like you had to kind of know where it was. It's off the road. You can't
Yeah.
see it from the road, so it's kind of like the ideal place for if there is some alleged illegal activities or mob stuff. This will be the perfect place because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
sight, out of mind. You've got tunnels that go right to the river. If the cops are coming in front, you go right out the tunnels, down the river. Bye, we're never sure.
Yep.
So
You
it's
never saw
it's
me.
it's just cool house in general to have as a restaurant.
I had a lady on one of our tours who used to be a hostess
Mhm.
when it was open as a restaurant. And she told the story that Sammy the plumber used to bring his mistress here and they would do private dining on the second floor. And that kind of irritated her because it was never his wife. It was always his mistress.
Yeah.
And she asked him one time, she goes, why do you come here so often? And he goes, because the food is fantastic and no one can find me here. So, it's secondhand information, but of course, that'd be kind of cool to have that connection that we know at least one mobster used to dine here.
Yeah, and for people watching, the second floor, there is a room, I believe, and I think it's the room that you're referencing, where there is sort of like a bell that you can ring.
There's 2 rooms up
So
there actually have a
you
bell
can have
for
a
private
completely
dining.
private
Yep.
dining experience with absolutely no interruptions. If you need someone, you just basically call for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's stories.
So with those stories, I'm sure, and all the interesting activity that's probably been here, that's taken place in this space back in that time period, have you, either of you, ever experienced anything during your tours, or even if you were just down here that, you could say came from some of that crazy activity back then?
Yeah, so I mean, Dawn's been here the longest. I've been here 5 years. I mean, we've had so many experiences down here.
Oh, can I?
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know what we're going
So
with, but
this is
let's
the
do it.
last one.
You were
Okay.
excited, so let's roll
Okay.
this one.
No, this is when Kyle got his comeuppance. So remember that one?
I don't know what that word is. I'm here for the big words,
Yep. Okay.
but I'm
Um,
sure.
Follow the story.
Got it.
All right. So it was during COVID. We still had tours.
I remember now.
Okay. We still had tours, but we did very small tours. And we had a couple traveling nurses. So we said we'd give them a free tours. Yeah, it's kind of cool. And I had said very stupidly, I haven't had an experience here in a while. And that was dumb. I've learned that over time. So
Mhm.
we were on the second floor, and while I was telling the story of the second floor, something jerked my hair back so hard that my head snapped backwards.
Oh, jeez.
And then I thought, well, I'm not going to react. And I thought, well,
Yeah,
maybe it
yeah.
got stuck in my mask. So I kept turning my head, and it was
It
like
looked really weird from a guest kind of perspective because I was kind of helping her with the tour, just kind of standing with the guests, and everyone was kind of looking at her like, "Is she having an episode? Like, what's is something happening?" But she kind of like she just played it off and went on with it. So
yeah, I didn't mention anything until after the tour. And Kyle thought it was hysterically funny.
it was actually. Remember, we were down here like a week or two later,
Hmm.
and we were waiting for another tour to come down to the basement, and we were just sitting there, and I looked at Dawn and I said, "Hey, remember that time you got your hair pulled? That was really really funny."
We were right behind the score, as a matter of fact. And then what happened next?
And that's when I was like, probably shouldn't have said that. And I'll never remember. I was sitting there, I was just standing there behind the bar, and I felt someone like put a finger in one of my belt loops and just yanked me over. And I lost my balance and fell over. And I remember I looked at Dawn, and she just started laughing. And she's like, "Your face and your eyes were so big," because I totally, like, you get occasionally touched in the paranormal. Like, it's not.
You don't usually fly back.
No, it doesn't
Yeah,
have like
no,
maybe you'll
that's
feel like a slight touch, but it's few and far between like the physical stuff. And
Yeah.
that like I felt it like somebody's finger just went whoop, and they're like, I'll show you.
So, first of all, he just said, remember, it was so funny when that happened to you. And then he went flying backwards, and the look on his face, I was dying. And I thought it finally happened to somebody else because I've had so many bizarre experiences.
Mhm.
And not only did it happen to someone else, but I witnessed it, which
Yeah.
made my whole day.
It's like karma.
Yeah, it
It
was
really was,
it
yeah.
was very comedic timing for the ghost here. It actually was perfect timing.
I think we're still laughing when the tour actually came down. We're like, all right, we have to like pretend that didn't happen. But
But
it was
after like the initial shock, I was like, "Oh my god, it feels really cool." Like, I was like, "There's no way." And like you were looking right at me. I wasn't
You
like
just went flying
leaning. I
backwards.
was standing perfectly still. Like there's no way. I was like, just fell over. So that's really really cool.
Normal people probably would have run out,
Yeah.
said, I'm never going back there. We're like, cool.
I mean, there's just
Glad it wasn't on camera, you know?
there's we're here so often. We do it. We hear a lot of the stories of people coming in to investigate. There may or may not be a small critter running around the ceiling. So
Possibly.
that's what we're reacting to. Pretty sure that's what it is. We're just going to say that's what it is.
Yeah.
But we hear so many reports from like people with so many similar activity, same kind of EVP, same kind of vibes. But then every once in a while, we'll get something completely different down here. Like, Dawn, you were like one of the first teams to investigate here before you were even part of the organization.
Yes.
And I think, did you get an EVP, something mob related, where they thought the cops were here or thought somebody was listening to them or something,
We
right?
had recorders on the second floor and we went over to the trailer, so nobody was in the house.
Mhm.
But I have an EVP. It's at this place is bugged.
Which is crazy, right? Like super
Yeah.
intelligent. Like they may not have
I know.
understood like what Dawn or her team was doing here, but they're like,
Yeah.
somebody's listening and like that could be the cops. And that's what we get a lot of, especially in the basement, but sometimes it goes all over the
Yeah.
house too, where you get a lot of like mob related stuff. Like, if you start asking questions, like one time was the coolest thing. We had a group of, I think they were state troopers,
Mhm.
police, and they were investigating and I said to them, I said it before I left, I was like, hey, there's a lot of rumored mob activity. You guys are cops. I don't know. Maybe you guys could be like a big trigger object. And they got
Yeah.
some really bizarre responses to that. Like really weird EVPs, spirit box activity was like, didn't want them here. So I
Yeah.
think it kind of worked.
Oh, yeah, definitely a trigger object. We've played music
Mhm.
from like that era of 1920s, 1930s, play really loud and then shut it off and just wait.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how many times we've done that and heard walking up and down the stairs. I've heard the door open and slam and then heard walking across the hall. And it sounds like a storm door, except the storm door is not there anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
crazy. I've heard that a few times. So that's a really great way to get something happen especially if nothing's going on for a little while, is
Yeah.
just to like mix it up a little bit.
Mhm.
And then of course there's the shadow guy who
Mhm.
is not a very nice man, doesn't like me very much.
No, he is really not fond of going at all.
No, he calls me a lot of bad words. But I still remember the first time I came across him. was I was on the other side. Well, I was trying to get to the other side of the basement and I couldn't cross the threshold.
Mhm.
Okay. This is a weird story. I could not step across it. And I kept saying, it's just in my head. Just step across it. Just step across it.
And that's happened to other people.
Yes. Several other. Sorry about that. You hear that though, right? Do you hear that through
Yeah,
there?
that's definitely, yeah.
That's weird. Hopefully it's a mouse and not a rat
Yeah.
or a ghost. I'd hope it's a ghost.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a ghost rat.
So the reason I'm telling you this story, okay,
Mhm.
this is really weird. I can't go across the threshold. So I call my husband. I was like, come in here, see if you can cross this line. Maybe it's in my head.
Mhm.
And then somebody yelled from the other side of the room saying, come back and help me. Because they saw a gigantic black shadow that was whooshing toward their face.
Oh,
And this person was not okay. We had to take her outside the building.
wow.
So I never did cross the threshold. So flashback a couple years forward. Flash
Flash
forward.
forward.
Thank you. After several different weird incidences down here,
Mhm.
I contacted him through somebody who channeled, right? Which is interesting. So
Like a
supposedly
medium
a medium.
type deal.
So I've communicated with him a couple times,
Mhm.
right? So, Kyle was there,
Mhm.
right? He said that Kyle, you reminded him of somebody.
Yes, he said, I reminded him of someone, and then I questioned him. I'm like, well, is that good or bad? And who is that? And there was no answer. And I'm like, okay. So, jury's still out on how he feels about me, but
Yeah, and he hid behind me
I
at
did
that
hide
point.
behind Dawn
He
at
did.
one
And then
point.
he said he wanted to smash a bottle over my head. So I was like,
Oh,
all right. I was like, can I have your flashlight? Because if a bottle comes flying, I want to see it.
yeah.
But
You know,
viewers, it only seems
it's
to be
just me.
related around
It's
Dawn.
just me.
No one else has that. He
So
interacts with other people, other teams. Sometimes he's grumpy, but he is very adamant about his dislike for Dawn. And
yeah.
I'm still trying to get out of him, like, why?
So
So
Kyle asked him, why do you dislike Dawn so much? And he said, because I was the first one who noticed him. Right.
Mm, mhm.
And I was
So
like,
you blew
chills.
his
It gives you
cover.
chills a little
Yeah.
bit.
yeah. And of course I go right back to that time where I couldn't cross the threshold. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black to where I was trying to walk to, but I had this horrible feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that was the connection and that we've had this connection ever since.
And that has also happened to other people where if you're in the bar side, anyone who hasn't been here to White Hill, but the bar side, and then we call it the older side, which is
Right.
the basement that isn't dug out. And sometimes when you get to that space where it changes from the speakeasy to the older part, like you just physically, like, you're just like, I can't do it. It's happened to me. And it's even happened to your husband, who's
Yeah.
6'5", like,
Mhm.
giant man.
It's weird.
Like,
It's very,
it's weird. It's a weird sensation. Like, and I'm in here all the time, and there's times where I can just walk right back there, and there's other times where I'm just like, I think everything's fine back there, and that's it. So it's
You feel
very,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a weird vibe.
So do you guys think that there's something back there that, that
I
is preventing you from going in
I
there?
have a theory. That being said, no idea if it's true.
All conjecture.
We're all for theories here.
So there was a rumor, maybe an urban tale. I don't know. It's passed down to me.
Local lore.
Mhm.
There you go. That somebody was stabbed to death in that corner on this side of the bar over a poker game.
Not documented historically.
Don't know the time frame. Don't know anything. But just somebody was murdered, stabbed to death.
Mhm.
So, but I think it's him.
That
So
would make
in
sense.
theory, if it was a lot going on, you probably would have
Mhm.
just drug the body down one of the tunnels, dumped him in the river, and went. I don't know. I never saw him. It's a
Huh.
guess. However, where he's seen most is where the entrance of the tunnel was on that side of the house.
Okay. Okay.
And I kind of think of the same kind of theory. Like, we don't know, but it kind of leans towards something like that. But I think it's just like when he's done interacting, he's just like, done. And he throws off that vibe, like, just leave, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's my theory. Because this is all conjecture. We think it's a male spirit. We can't prove it, but he kind of is super intelligent.
Mhm.
Like, he'll come out and he'll communicate with people, but then when he's done, he's done. Like, he's just like, I'm done talking to you guys, and he bounces. Like, he'll
Yeah.
come out, he'll come
He'd be the
talk
first
through
person to tell you to F off.
EVPs, ESTA sessions he comes through, and it's super intelligent. Like, they're talking to someone, and then all of a sudden, it just stops and goes away. Like, one of our volunteers, Michelle, she was down here one time with a REM pod
Mhm.
and was having, and it's on video, she's having a conversation through interactions, like yes for blue, red for no. And you light this up twice, boom, boom, boom. Do you like talking to me? Do you like actually she asked, do you like Barry? And it lit up red, and Barry came down the steps and it lit up red multiple times. So it's a really cool video, and it goes on. She describes it goes on for like 5 to 7 minutes and then just done. And he was just done interacting, like, I'm out, and that's it.
Peace out.
But it does also get really, really dark down here. Like, I've been down here sitting at the bar, and the lights are off, and you know, we've got some ambient light, but you're in a basement. So it's kind of going to stay the same light once the lights are off.
Right.
And you kind of get your night vision. I remember one time the vibe changed. And it just felt different. And it just got darker, which my brain couldn't comprehend because I'm like, we're in a basement. There's no extra light. There's nothing.
Yeah.
It's not going to get darker. And then
Yeah.
I remember I couldn't see anyone sitting next to me. And it just felt like,
You can't
It
see
felt
the
like I was in
exit,
a-
you can't see the exit sign, you can't see anything.
it felt like I was in a room full of people, almost like at a concert. Like you were just
Yeah,
like couldn't
yeah.
see. And then all of a sudden, boop, it lifted and it went back to normal dark basement. I was like, my mind was like, I don't know what just happened. I can't process that.
So one time I saw it on the second floor. It was the only time I've not seen it in this area that I saw it in another part of the house, where I was giving a team a tour before their ghost hunt, and they were behind me, and I was coming down to the second floor. And, you know, things are just off. Something's off. So I just stopped, and I was staring into the room directly across from the stairs. And I know I had turned the light on, and I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. And I was like, well, it's an old house. The electric, you know, popped a bulb. And then all of a sudden, whatever was in front of me moved. So as it moved, the light was on behind it, and it went through the wall. And it was so black, you couldn't see anything through it. And it was huge. It was probably 6 foot wide as it moved. And of course, I'm just standing there with like my jaw to the floor, going, okay, what logical explanation could
Yeah.
this be? And then get it together. You have to finish this tour.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, okay, I saw nothing, and then just continued with the tour. But it was insane. And I wish somebody else would have seen it too, because it was crazy. I think it's the same guy, but I don't know. I've never ever seen it in another part of the house since that.
Yeah. I remember that night. You were pretty shaken up. It was weird. You were like, the same thing like my experience. Your brain can't process what you're seeing. It doesn't
It
make
takes
sense.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's so many experiences we have down here. We could probably make like 2 or 3 speakeasy
those,
podcasts.
Yeah.
But what's really cool is like that's just one little snapshot of the history of the speakeasy. People get experiences from, we think sometimes the Victorian era, which this wasn't a speakeasy,
Yeah.
1920s,
Who knows?
30s, 40s, all the way up to the 70s and 80s. Sometimes people think they're kind of interacting with different people. So it's like, you don't know. And like this place was open for so long.
Yeah.
There was a place that people gathered. It's like, who knows who's here?
Yeah, and the theory is we're also near a river, so river brings in psychic energy. But I also think sometimes we just get like some crazy spirits off the river that come visit. I don't know, because sometimes all of a sudden we have like a haunting that doesn't make any sense. It's something that we haven't seen. I've been here. I don't know how long have I been here. I don't know.
Been here-
A bit.
I've been here 5. You've been here probably 11 or 12.
I think more than that.
Probably more. I mean,
20.
with the organization, you probably hear way before that.
15, 16, I don't know, a lot. But every now and then you'll have an experience that's completely different than any experience you've had before. So there's like the usual and then something completely left of center. And so then I'm like, is that something just passing through? I don't know.
Now,
Tell us.
something that I do also want to ask you guys, because you mentioned trigger items a few times. And around here, if you ever come to White Hill, you'll notice a few objects that are strategically placed throughout the house, but especially down here. On the bar, I see a couple cups, there's some poker chips, and some cards. And I know when I come down here with tours, and even with, my own group, a lot of new people will come in and say, well, what's all this stuff? Like, we just sit down and play. Do you feel that by kind of reenacting some of the scenarios that maybe some of these spirits were in, that you're kind of inviting that energy in?
Let me tell you about a fun game I just played last week.
You got something done.
So we were playing blackjack. So we set up like an extra chair and we put a K2 meter, and 3 of us were playing blackjack and put out a 4th card. Right. And then, and then I would hold it up. No one else could see, but I would show the chair, like, come on over and play with us.
Yeah.
And then, do you want to hit? I can't say how many times it would like light up, like hit me. So we're like, light that up if you want to hit. And we just kept playing cards. And that was so much fun. But that's why the cards are here. There's poker chips if you want to play some poker, tell them to ante up,
Mhm.
things like that. Some people pretend to pour drinks.
Mhm.
So we have, drinks in a dirty glass with a couple bottles. You can just pretend to pour a
All
drink.
non-alcoholic.
Empty. So a lot of Trevor Rock. You can see, well, you can't see, but we can see. Around the bar is pictures from the 1920s, trying to get that 1920s prohibition kind of vibe down here.
And there is also a really great painting of some pears. that hopefully we can add into the pod. Can't unsee it once you see
Yeah,
it.
you can't
But
see it.
I think that like Dawn said, like anything to do with gambling down here, music is a big trigger object. Like I've played a lot of like Glenn Miller 1940s swing kind of stuff, and it's gotten a lot of hits on the equipment there if you shut it off. It's really interesting.
Now, I know that in the past you guys have hosted some events here. I think there was a murder mystery that you guys hosted a year or two ago, maybe a couple of years ago. Was the idea ever floated of maybe having like a 1920s themed party down here?
Oh, we've had a few.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where the original idea to get the 1920s pictures down here
Yeah.
and try to make it look more like, when I started here, it looked very 1970s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what did it look like when you guys first
Oh, it
Yeah.
looks pretty bad. Hopefully we can find a picture to show you guys. It was fluorescent green and white with plastic flowers.
a lot of wicker?
Mhm.
A lot of wicker, which was really scary. About 14 inches of dust. That floor we didn't know was green. I actually thought it was brown before, and then I cleaned it and I was like, oh, the floor's green. Imagine that. We definitely tried a transformation. So we tried to make it look more manly, more like, not an ice cream parlor, more like a bar.
Tried to bring it back to what we thought it looked like because there's really only one newspaper picture of the basement that we have that
Mhm.
we're gonna pop in there.
There you go.
But yeah, so it's really a hard guess to really what it looks like, but we tried to do it to the best of historically
Yeah.
accurate as we could do it.
Yeah.
Definitely not lime green and white. I don't think
No.
that was the theme in the early 20s.
That
It
wasn't the
shouldn't have been a
vibe.
theme
No, that wasn't the
anywhere
vibe.
ever.
So, with that being said, Kyle, you had a pretty interesting idea of perhaps maybe seeing if we can conjure or talk to some of these spirits through an EVP. And for some of our viewers, what EVP stands for is electronic voice phenomenon. So, do you want to see if maybe we can
Yeah.
have them join our podcast?
Yeah. So what sometimes like when me and Dawn, and even you're starting to do tours now, Andrea, when you start talking about the history and telling people about the house, sometimes it brings out spirits.
We love hearing
And you
about
get
stuff.
activity. So I thought we're sitting here in this big empty house by ourselves doing this podcast, talking
Mhm.
about them, about their lives, and see if maybe we could get an EVP. So we figured maybe at the end of every podcast, we'll ask a couple questions. Maybe we'll get something, maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. If we get good luck with it, anyone in the comments, just see if there's a question you want to ask, and we'll maybe ask it next podcast. So I'll let it run for a little bit. So again, to add on to what Andrew was saying about EVPs, for those who don't know, it's you take any kind of recorder. This one is a little bit older. Sometimes it gets more evidence. We're going to do a couple questions, and we're going to leave like 10, 15 seconds in between because sometimes we find it takes them a little bit longer to answer, and then we'll play it back. And a lot of times you'll get voices that aren't in here. So you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. I'll start off and just add in whatever.
Okay.
If there's anyone down here with us and you heard us talking about all the history and whatnot, can you do me a huge favor? Can you come up to this red light and say White Hill Mansion Pod?
Is there anything that you would like our listeners and viewers to know?
My turn? Oh, good. I'm thinking about it. Okay. So if anybody out there is listening, first of all, we would like you to join us. We have a chair here for you. So please come up and join us. And we would like to know if you would like to tell us part of your history here, or if we have discovered anything about you. You heard that? That wasn't you?
All right, we're gonna stop that. That was a strat. That was straight up voice over here. I heard a voice over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it was like whisper. Did you heard something, right?
Oh, I thought it came from over there.
No, I heard it over here. It sounded like
Well, hopefully it came up.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see.
If there's anyone down here with us and you heard us talking about all the history and whatnot, can you do me a huge favor? Can you come up to this red light and say, Whiteville Mansion Pod? Is there anything that you would like our listeners and viewers to know? I can? Okay. Okay, so if anybody out there is listening, first of all, we would like you to join us. We have a chair here for you, so please come up and join us. And we would like to know if you would like to tell us part of your history here, or if we have discovered anything about you. Alright, we're gonna.
I don't hear anything,
No.
but who knows? That's ghost hunting, right?
Well, that pretty much sums up just a little snippet of the basement / the speakeasy. We have plenty more to tell you about, not just this room, but all of White Hill. And we want to thank you for joining us and thank Kyle and Dawn as well. And we're going to be seeing you guys again shortly. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And guys, is there anything else you want to say before we cut the feed?
The only thing I want to say is visit our website and our Facebook. We're going to be having some fall events soon. A lot of couple movie nights, candlelight tours, some public ghost hunts, and everything that we do goes right back into the house. So check it out. Come out and see White Hill.